Run. I can't think of anything else to say other than run. But I guess for that makes sense. I'd have to go into detail on what happened 10 years ago, when I was about 8 years old. I've always loved Christmas, ever since I was able to understand the word, Christmas. Even the name sounds festive. I'd grown up with every story and song about how good old Saint Nick and the warm holiday imaginable. And in short, one day I decided that I would see him for myself. As most kids would do the same thing, upbringing often considered. I prepared for at least a week, navigating around the potential landmines like parents being awake, or being caught by the fat jolly man himself, or just having any evidence to that even I was ever there. I decided that I would venture downstairs at 3 a.m., armed with a blanket and some black coffee to keep me awake. Although I couldn't stand the bitter taste, often found myself wanting to regurgitate every time I took a sip. When the day finally came, oddly enough, I found myself hearing Santa Claus is coming to town, playing just about everywhere for just about as long as I could stand. I hear the lines, he sees you when you're sleeping, he knows when you're awake, he knows if you've been bad or good, over and over again. But I guess something just didn't click, and I wish it really hadn't. I really, really wish it hadn't. Because that night I saw something I desperately wish I could unsee. Even now, hearing the sound of a sleigh bell is reflexively a recoil if I to expect something deadly to appear consecutively. The air that night was stiff and chilly, and it was coming down the violent outside of my window. I would hear every step I took down the stairs, revive my pulse, and renew the sense of dread. Both the dread being caught and the dread of feeling descending any flight of creaking stairs. The dread you feel when it startles you, the sudden, and yet you drown out the sound for a split second, and you might mistake it for a human cry. And yet I continued down the stairs until I reached a place, and I would be hiding, a small nook between the wall in the living room, and in the sofa, and the radio from which I had anticipated being able to secretly witness Santa's arrival. So I waited there, and I waited, and I waited. I must have been for at least my second shot of my black coffee, certain that I had been here for at least every 2 hours. Then I glanced at the time, and to my honor and horror, not 1 minute had passed. Not one. It was still 3 a.m. I thought certainly that the clock must have been wrong. Certainly. Yes, surely that the clock was broken. I had been counting the seconds upon minutes of waiting for anything to happen. I had almost convinced myself that the time passed when I was at the clock that struck for whatever reason, or stuck. I had almost been successful of calming myself down when I noticed the wind had stopped. Walking sound of the wind, which resembled of a human scream, and the occasional knock of an angry gust on any closed windows, had completely halted. It was silent, completely silent. So silent, in fact, that I could hear the sound of shaking breath. A silence that was so loud that it accumulated the darkness. Every shadow, every dark corner seemed to reach to me at once, if trying to swallow me up too, and I could hear my own increasingly struggled breathing. And I stayed like that until I heard it. Something which shattered the silence, once more in breaking the comfort that had settled into the cutting through me like a jagged at the end of the cold knife. It was a jingle, a soft, rhythmic chime that set to slightly crooked at the gate at the sound of more like someone dragging themselves around by their elbows other than walking. My first thought when I heard the unmistakable chime of sleigh bells was that Santa was finally here, but the sound of it grew closer, and I noticed that was accompanied by soft whispering, sound which sounded like close enough for a human to be recognizable. but inhuman enough for it to be unable to tell how old the voice was, or how feminine or masculine it was. My pulse was quickened now, and this wasn't Santa. With each dragging step, the sleigh bells only grew louder, and the whimpering became more clear. It's easier when you're eating. It sounded like less human than whimpering had. The speech was broken up and distorted, and that thing spoke, literally choking on its own lung. Step chime, the darkness was swallowing me up once more, eating away at my sanity. I have found it difficult to breathe. It was getting closer, and the crooked melody of the sleigh bells only grew louder. I held my breath between each pause for every step. Every agonizing second before, I heard the next chime. He knows when you're awake. Step chime. He knows if you've been bad or good. It was close. So close that I didn't know where it was, but it was so close I could feel the air beginning to suffocate me. Each chime was stealing my next breath more violently than the last. I could almost make out what it was saying now. Its voice was so grossly distorted. It sounded as if an animal was trying to speak while choking on its own blood. Creak, chime. And that was when I saw it. It finally came to view. It stared straight at me, more violently than ever. I fought to keep the coffee and my own dinner down. The skin stretched even tightly around its face, gray and leathery, and around its mouth, twisted into a sinister smile, or at least as close as a smile as it could be heard. There was a hole in its lower jaw, which had its tongue sticking out with dry blood, clinging to the lining of the cavity of its beard, sparse with the white hair barely clinging onto its chin. From its torso all the way down to its neck, the bells were wrapped around it to the point where the creature could move so much as to head the wrong way, it might have accidentally garroted itself. I tried to scream, I tried to move, but the silence has already devoured my cry and the darkness already crushed my limbs. I could only watch this creature as slowly as it hobbled towards me, each sleigh bell ringing, aggravating itself to my memory as a distorted grimace whitened, causing the flow of fresh, warm blood to flow in the cavity of its face. Good girls shouldn't be up this hour. Suddenly, I assumed at this point, summoned human strength. The creature had torn me from my nook and thrown me off my limb, petrified body to the wall. The doors and the windows clattered with the angry gust of wind, as snow blowed into from the window to the creature that must have entered. Chilling my body, I tried to look up. I tried to breathe, but before I could try to cry out again, the chain of sleigh bells was wrapped around my neck. The freezing metal dug into my skin and choked me. My eyes began to roll back as I frantically grabbed them in the darkness, and God, the ringing. I could hear them. They chimed as they cut off my air, darkening my vision, intermingled with the choking of my sobbing. The bells almost sounded like screaming, and the screaming of the bells that sounded like other children, all crying out together to make the bell sound, before it had faded to cold, unconscious silence. That was the last thing I heard. I woke up upon the cold floor with the half pitcher of coffee clutched tightly in my one hand and the blanket wrapped around me. I exhaled quietly, relieved that it was all been a dream, and proceeded with my day as normal. I had almost convinced myself that it never happened. That is, until my mother asked me where that bruise around my neck came from. And outside I heard that single sleigh bell ringing in the darkness of the early winter morning. And that, my little pretties, was If You Hear Sleigh Bells. A a creepypasta, Christmas creepypasta, written by Ramunetan, and I do apologize if I don't pronounce the author's name correctly. My final thoughts on this story? Well, I could definitely say I heard of this story from God of Creepy, a few years back. I think that's when I was just starting to, narrating some creepypastas sometime in 2019. So, I decided to go on my way and, read this story. Now, I did hear from Mountain Eye's narrations of this story, narration of this story. So, I did take a look at that one. And I definitely would have to say it's a very good Christmas creepypasta for what this one is. Like, basically this is basically a person having a dream of this evil creature, attacking this person and everything like that. So, the concept, well, wasn't really the best original concept of this story. While it's not the most original plotline or anything, but it was well executed with the story. I'm definitely saying that now. This story really executed with the concept very well. The grammar was good enough, so that's all that. Like, the grammar was really good, and the story flowed nicely. Like, I mean, I'm really glad that the story didn't kill off the narrator or something. Like, it seemed like the person was going to at the end, but that thankfully did not happen at all, which I will give it. Now, the one thing I would have to say about the problems with the story, right now, I'm gonna say here right now, there's not really much I can definitely say, but I would have liked it to have read a little more about on who would have liked to got to know the protagonist a little more. Also, Santa or the monster, while he was described well, it didn't really work out. Well, not work out, but it didn't really do much to me when he was there and found the girl and tried to choke her out, but there wasn't really much conflict of the solution, and the story fell flat at the end. Well, I mean, to be completely honest, I mean, I would have liked to see a little more imagination and the lack of conflict or resolution shit about the story. That's what I would really like to see. I mean, the story was not a terrible story. I think it was a pretty good, interesting concept for what it is. I mean, the prompting of this story was very well done, and it was perfect. The flow in this structure was nicely, and I actually wish there was more added to the story. Maybe that's just me, but yeah. I mean, other than that, the story was good, but it's not perfect. I mean, it's not a perfect creepypasta. It's not terrible, but it's not bad either. That's something I would have to say. So, this story was written in 2016, so this was written, a few years ago, so it wasn't, just recent story or anything like that. So, alright. I mean, it's a pretty interesting concept of the story. It executed with all that very well. I really wish we could have got more information and got to know the protagonist more, as well as the creature or Santa. I mean, the ending kind of fell flat is what I mean. Maybe the ending could have been maybe more better, but I mean, that's just here or there. I mean, to the author, which is Ramunetan, good job with this story. This may not be the best story, and the author did state in here that this was his or her first story. I mean, I'm gonna really give it a pass on that it was like his or her first story, so I'm willing to give it a pass. But other than that, story was not perfect, but not terrible either. So, it's that. Now, like I'm gonna say right now, this is just simply my own personal opinion, and if you happen to disagree with me, that's fine too. We're all entitled to our own opinions regards to these creepy pastas, and this is simply my own personal thoughts. My final rating of this story would have to be a 8.5 out of 10. I'm giving it an 8.5 out of 10 because it was a really good story. Like, the concept of it was well done. The story executed with the concept very well. However, I really do wish that we got, the protagonist, got to know the protagonist more, as well as, the creature or Santa, if you guys want to refer to him as that. But other than that, this was not a terrible story. Not the best story in the world, I'm not gonna lie, but not not the terrible story. So that I would have to sit here and say that now. But like I'm going to say, this is simply my own personal opinion, and if you happen to disagree with me, that's fine too. We're all entitled to our own opinions regards to these creepypastas, and this is simply. Oh wait a second, I already did that. Okay, sorry about that, yeah, but yeah, this is just my own opinion. Like I said again, you disagree with me, that's fine too. So yeah, sorry I almost repeated the thing again. I do apologize for that. Anyways, what did you guys think about this creepypasta? Did you enjoy it? Did you not? Also, what have you have done personally to help make this story a lot better? Feel free to leave me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. I'm the Queen of Lions. Thank you so much for watching today's episode, and if you're brand new here to this channel, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe because I make brand new videos every single day. Don't forget to ring the notification bell to when I upload so that way you guys will not miss an upload. And as always, please roll the outro because I'm out.